going to the mat and we're going to start in a seated position. Sitting up nice and tall, nice and long. Let's start with knees bent, feet flat to your mat. I'm going to roll the shoulders back and down and reach the arms to the front. And we're going to hinge back at the hip. Nice flat back, proud chest. And then slow as you rise. Sitting up nice and tall. We're going to stretch the spine long towards the ceiling and hinge just at the hip. Leaning back and then coming up tall, nice and strong. And hinge. Dropping the shoulders down, letting the collarbones spread wide as you hinge back at the hip. Trying not to shrug the shoulders. We want to be using both abdominals and back extensors as we hinge back. Knitting the ribs together at the front and the back of the body as we move back. One more. And then feet and legs will drop into butterfly pose. And we'll sit nice and tall. Hold on to the legs, bend the elbows slightly as you pull yourself forward towards the feet. Extending the spine. Chest is lifting. We're feeling that engagement of the muscles right below the shoulder blades as you lift the chest. And then sitting up nice and tall, nice and long. We're going to drop our left ear to our shoulder. And then coming right back to center. Right ear drops over towards that right shoulder to stretch the left side of the neck. And back to center. Moving and hinging from side to side. Dropping the head from side to side. Trying not to shift the body. Make it just about the head and the neck moving. Last one, over to the left. And we'll come back to center with the head. Reset the legs back to a bent knee, flat foot position to the mat. And arms reach to the front. Stretching nice and long without caving the chest forward. We roll those shoulders back and down. We're going to tilt the hips back, curl and roll back. You can stay out of the flexion by returning to that flat back hinge at the hip. Curling back just to the shoulder blade and fold and curl, drawing the abdominals in. We're curling and rolling up, sitting up, stretching nice and tall, long for the ceiling. Hips tilt. We curl and roll back, rolling along the spine piece by piece to the shoulder blades, and fold. Nice deep fold at the mid-ribs. Stacking tall at the top with ears stacked over shoulder over hip. Stretching long to the ceiling at the top. Let's do one more roll back. Rolling along the spine piece by piece. Keeping the ribs knitted together, maintaining that fold across the bra line, the mid-ribs. Stacking tall. Returning to that butterfly stretch, soles of the feet together, knees are falling out to the side. Grabbing the legs, we'll bend the elbows slightly, hinge forward, arch the back. Extending and lifting the chest, we're adding that arch right across the mid-back. All of that pressure lines up right through here. We keep it out of the lumbar spine. Stretch the neck long as the shoulders press down towards the hips. We sit up. Sit tall, rolling the shoulders back and down. Head and neck is going to rotate and look out over that left shoulder. and back to center. Drop and set the shoulders down towards the hips as you twist the head and the neck and look over that right shoulder. Getting some movement in the cervical spine without the shoulders lifting towards the neck, towards the ears. Nice and smooth. Glide of the head and the neck from side to side. Without the chest, without the spine twisting. One rotation each side. And back to center. Legs straighten out. They'll come mat width apart. And we'll stretch the legs nice and long, sitting up long, up from the sit bones. Arms reach forward. We're going to hinge with the flat back towards the legs. Flat back, we reach. And sit back, sit tall. Feel the extensors, those muscles up your back fire and engage as you lean forward over the legs. And we're hinging at the hip once again. Trying to maintain that neutral spine. Reaching the tailbone back as the upper body comes forward. One more. And chin drops towards the chest versus bringing the head all the way forward. Don't overstretch the back and the neck. Just drop the chin straight down. Fold at the mid-ribs and curl and roll forward. Reaching forward through the legs. Try to take hold of the legs or the feet and pull yourself forward. In that rounded spine, feeling that stretch travel from the back of the lower leg all the way up to the hip and along the spine. Stretching the neck long as if a string is pulling the crown of the head forward between the feet. We drive the shoulders, underarms down as we stretch the spine through. Holding for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Curling up, restacking, sitting up nice and tall, nice and long. We pull legs together, flexed at the ankle, pulling the top of the foot back, trying not to overflex through the toes. We're going to bring our arms out to a T position, rotate the palms up, sitting tall. We twist through the mid-ribs to the right, and we double or triple pulse. 1, 2, feel free to add a third. Before twisting around to the left. We're twisting through the mid-ribs. Nice and smooth rotation. Sitting taller. Stretching the legs longer forward towards the end of the mat. And we're keeping the arms pulled apart. One more twist and rotation to each side, sitting tall, stretching long. And arms come forward. Dropping the chin down towards the chest, we forward fold, rolling out over the legs, reaching forward nice and long, trying to drop the shoulders down the back as you flex at the ankle, pulling the top of the foot back. Feel the weight of your sit bones settle against the mat and to the floor. Pressing the back of the legs down as you reach the legs nice and long. One more breath. And we'll curl and restack. Sitting up nice and tall, nice and long. Let's point the toes. Stretch the arms forward. We're going to tilt the hips back. Sinking into that C curve. Shoulders over hips. Feel the draw of your abdominals back to your lumbar spine. Feeling that stretch along the sacrum. Shoulders are still aligned over the hip, even though your low back is in that C curve. And we curl up and restack. Shoulders down. Head and neck are long. We tilt the hips back, pulling our abdominals strong towards our spine to feel that pull, that lift up through pelvic floor, in through those lower middle abdominals. Pulling the rib cage in, feeling that stretch along the low back. And rise. And restack. Sitting and stretching tall, nice and long. Hips tilt. Just working that C curve. We're not rolling back to the mat. The shoulders aren't moving back. Only the hips are tilting back to help create that curve, that flexion in your low back. Last one. Strong to restack. Arms come back behind you. We're going to bridge and lift the hips. If you can't put any weight on your hands, your wrists, or your arms, you can lay back for a regular shoulder bridge or pelvic curl. Hands are supporting your upper body behind you, pressing the chest forward, reaching through. And on the exhale, we lift the hips up. Pressing the hips up towards the ceiling. And slow to lower. Feel free to play around with the position of the hands and the arms. You can try fingertips facing back or hands and fingertips facing out to the side. Pressing up is the most important thing, to draw the shoulders down the back, stretch the spine long before you exhale to bridge and lift. Another hand and wrist position is fingers facing forward. And playing around with those different positions to create that mobility in the wrist, that stretch along the forearm, up the arm and into the shoulder. So it's good to play around with those different positions to see where you have restrictions. Nice proud chest, keep the shoulders down, away from the neck, away from the ears. I like cycling the arm position. 1 repetition each direction. Two more. Stacking nice and tall before you move into that bridge. And last one. Slow to lower down. Arms come to the front, slowly dropping the chin towards the chest. We fold and curl. And we're going to roll forward, stretch out over the legs. Nice straight and long legs. We'll hold this stretch for a few to let any folks that were in their pelvic curl or their shoulder bridge on their backs come up into this seated position once again. Reaching the legs out nice and long, pressing the back of the knees down. You can play with a pointed toe or work at a flexed ankle to increase the stretch up the back of the leg. Feeling the weight of the hips evenly planted down to the mat, stretching the legs further and longer. Gliding the shoulders down the back. And slow to restack. Sitting up nice and tall. We're going to move into our full roll up. Legs are nice and straight and reaching long. I'm working with a pointed toe. Arms are reaching to the front. We start with that pelvic tilt. Tilting the hips back, and then we begin to curl and roll. Rolling back along the spine, vertebra by vertebra, piece by piece, all the way back. Once your shoulders and your head make contact with the mat, pause for a minute. Arms are reaching towards the ceiling. We want to gauge how far we can bring the arms back. I want to go nice and slow. Arms come overhead. Once you feel the rib cage flare or your mid-back begin to arch or lift up, you need to pause. Bring the arms back and forward just a little bit. Try to reset the spine and the rib cage to the floor. And that's basically your stopping point until you can create some more mobility to keep your spine down and allow the arms to travel overhead so you don't get stuck trying to get into that first position of the roll-up. Finding that start position on the inhale, arms begin to flow forward as we lift head, neck, and fold at the mid-ribs to lift the chest. And exhale to curl. Curling and rolling up, piece by piece. Rolling forward, stretching out nice and long over the legs, and curling back. Rolling down to the mat, vertebra by vertebra. Again, take a moment and pause. Play with that position, that mobility of the shoulder to bring the arms up overhead without using your back or flaring the rib cage to find that extra mobility. Folding and curling, rolling up, reaching forward, stretching long. Even though we have a slight tuck of the chin down towards the chest, we are not craning the head and the neck forward. We would like to keep the ears stacked over the shoulders versus pivoting forward over the collarbone. Two more full roll-ups. Take your time through the movement, trying to articulate along the spine piece by piece. And we'll curl up and restack. I'm going to reset the hips so we're up onto the sit bone and cross that right leg over the left, and then wrap the left heel around that right hip. Sitting up nice and tall, nice and long. We're going to extend the spine. Lift the chest up for the ceiling. Drop the shoulders back. You can even drop the head back to stretch the front of the neck. Chest is lifted, feeling that stretch in the right hip. I'm going to slightly move this right leg in the hip a little bit. Holding on to that right knee, I pull the right knee in and let it fall back. Drawing the knee, the thigh towards your chest, and then back. So you can feel the stretch, shift in the hip as the leg pivots and moves. One more. And slow to unwind. Right leg stretches out so the left leg can cross over the right. Wrapping that right foot around to the outside of the left hip. Try not to sit on your foot. Allow it to be on the outside of the hip. And we're going to sit tall, sit long, weight both hips evenly, and then lifting the chest. Head, neck, chest lifts. You could drop the head back for a bigger stretch up the front of the neck. I'm going to reset the head and the neck just a little bit. We're still proud-chested. And then grabbing onto that left knee, we're going to pull the leg in towards the body and let it fall out and away. As we're bringing the knee, the thigh towards the chest, we're pressing that hip down. One more. And slow to unwind. Knees are going to be bent, feet are flat. We're going to curl and roll down so we're laying flat on our mat. Arms reach long, down by your side. Bend the knees, draw the heels towards the hips just a little bit more, just so they're closer to your sit bones. We stretch the arms long, down by the side of the body. Let the collarbone open, press the shoulder blades flat against the mat. And we bring our right leg up to tabletop position. Light pressure of the left foot to the mat as we inhale to hinge at the hip. Foot taps the floor before the leg returns to tabletop. All of the movement is coming only from the hip joint. On the inhale, the thigh moves away from the chest so the foot can tap the mat, and exhale up. Nice and smooth glide of the leg in the hip. And right foot rests back to the floor. Take a moment to reset the upper body. Weight the chest, the shoulder blades to the mat, and bring the left leg to tabletop. On the inhale, the foot lowers towards the mat, moving from the hip. We're stabilizing that left knee, so the knee is not moving. The angle is not changing at the knee, only at the hip. Nice smooth glide of the leg. Last two. And we rest the foot back to the mat. Right foot floats just up off of the floor. It presses straight out along the mat on the inhale. And then flex at the ankle, kick up towards the ceiling. Bend the knee. Draw the heel down towards the back of the thigh, towards the hip. And then inhale, slide that leg out. Flex and exhale to kick the leg up. Bend the knee, heel to hip, and then extend the leg out. And reach up towards the ceiling. You can play around with the pointed toe or the flexion at the ankle to draw the toes back towards the shin. Creating that bicycling motion with this right leg. One more. Resting the foot, taking a moment to reset your body. Left foot floats and extends out on the inhale. Exhale to flex at the ankle, kick up towards the ceiling, and then we'll bend the knee, bring the heel back towards the hip and extend nice and long down across the mat before kicking back up towards the ceiling with a straight leg. Bending the knee, heel to the hip to return to that lower extension. And again, you can play around with keeping the toes pointed throughout the movement, adding some flexion to get that stretch through the calf and through the lower leg. One more. And resting that left foot back to the mat. Fingers will interlace. We'll bring our hands behind the head, pressing the head down into the hands. Let's bring the elbows in around the face to stretch through the mid-back between the shoulder blades. And then elbows open out, pressing the back of the arms, the shoulders down against the mat, trying to avoid the rib flare. Let the chest open. Everything stretching wide. And then folding forward. Elbows come in, arms wrap around the face. And then opening out. Nice and slow, holding each part of the stretch for a breath or two before shifting. Last stretch of the elbows out. Feel the weight of the back and the rib cage pressing into the floor. Holding for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take a moment to reset. Find a natural position for the elbows. While the fingers are interlaced, hands behind the head, you slide the shoulders down. Feel the underarms hugging down the rib cage. And we exhale to fold at the mid-ribs to lift the chest along with the head. We pause for a breath at the top and slow to reset back to the mat. Nice deep fold across the bra line, right below the pecs, feeling the shoulder blades fold and lift up off of the mat. On our next exhale, as we fold and lift, we're going to hold that chest lift, slide the shoulders down, bring both legs up to tabletop position, and we're going to work our leg changes, hinging at the hip to foot tap the mat. We alternate legs, hinging from side to side, moving only at the hip, keeping the knee bend the same throughout the movement. Two more each side. And we'll rest the feet back to the mat. Shoulders and head return to the floor. Take a moment to reset. And on the next exhale, we fold and lift. Holding that chest lift, we move into our rotation. Twisting over and on to the right shoulder blade, through to center, and we twist left. Coming back to center, nice and smooth glide from shoulder to shoulder, keeping the balance and the weight evenly distributed between both hips with the feet planted to the mat. Legs are still and stable as you shift from side to side. Nice smooth rotations, 2 more each side. Coming back to center and slow to reset to the mat. Arms come down nice and long by your side. We're going to bring our legs to tabletop position. Hugging through the knees, through inner thighs. On the inhale, legs together, hinging at the hip, we lower towards the mat. The first few reps, low travel towards the floor. Try not to make big movements. Very small movements to begin with. Reaching the arms nice and long. And then we begin to move lower towards the floor. See if you can tap the mat with the toes without overarching the back or flaring the rib cage. We're going to knit tighter through the abdominals, engage the back extensors more as you hinge at the hip. Three, 2, 1. We hug the knees towards the chest, let the low back decompress. Left leg stretches out nice and long across the mat, pressing the back of the leg down to feel the stretch along the front of the thigh and the hip. And then we bring that right leg, right knee, cross body over to the left. I'm going to add some rotation to the mid-rib to lift the right hip. Right arm is going to reach up towards the ceiling, open out now to that T. Look out over the right arm and shoulder. Pressing the left leg straighter and longer as you move further into that rotation. And slow to unwind. Both knees hug in towards the chest. Flex the back, round the spine. And then extend that right leg out, nice and long, straight out over the mat. That left leg comes across the body. Left arm reaches up towards the ceiling and then opens out to a T. Look out over that left arm and shoulder as the leg rotates. You're twisting through the mid-ribs, reaching that right leg out nice and strong, straight and long. And slow to unwind. Bending the knees, placing the feet flat to the mat. We're going to move into our figure 4 stretch by crossing that right ankle over the left thigh. And we're going to begin by twisting that right leg in the hip. I'm going to place my hands on my hips so I can guide and help move that leg without the back twisting or the hips shifting out of position. I'd like the leg to twist smoothly in the hip. Little gap at the small of the back. And then left leg comes up to tabletop position, reaching through, grabbing the back of the left thigh, maintaining that arch at the small of the back, that space between the low back and your floor. Right elbow is pressing slightly into that right thigh to move the leg away. And you can rock a little bit from side to side. Shoulders are down, neck is long. Chest is open as the collarbone spreads wide. And then we're going to push that right knee away. And we'll switch sides. Right foot down to the mat. We cross the left ankle over the right thigh. I'm going to return hands to the hips and then allow that left leg to twist and move in the hip itself. Bringing the right leg up to tabletop position, we reach through, grab the back of the right thigh. Left elbow is pinned against the left thigh to help push the leg away. Try to stay heavy towards the tailbone to maintain that little gap at the small of the back. And then rock a little bit from hip to hip. One more breath. And slow to unwind. Knees are bent, feet are flat to the mat in line with your sit bones. And the arms reach up over the chest, fingertips towards the ceiling. On the exhale, arms lower, we fold at the mid-ribs, lifting the head, neck, and chest. And inhale to reset, still bracing through the abdominals as your head comes back to the floor. We fold and lift on the exhale. Reaching the arms long, keeping the hands and the arms off the mat so they stay parallel to the floor. And we bring legs to tabletop, continuing with the chest lift. You can modify by leaving the chest lift out completely and just holding tabletop while moving the arms. You could also return to fingers interlaced, hands behind the head to support the head and the neck. We add leg extensions to the chest lifts. Reaching the legs nice and long, squeezing through inner thigh. One more. Hug the knees in towards the chest. We grab the back of the thighs, and with some momentum, we curl and roll up. Float and balance on your sit bones, on your hips. Legs are floating in tabletop with our shoulders rolling back and down. We hinge back a little bit, create some space from the legs. And when you're ready, hands and arms come off, and we hold strong for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Feet down to the mat. Drop into that butterfly stretch. Round and roll forward over the legs, allowing the knees to fall out to the side. And we curl up and restack. Reaching your left hand behind your back, you're going to grab your left wrist with your right hand, pull the left arm farther back across the back of the body, and drop your head, your right ear, towards your right shoulder to stretch along the left side of the neck and across the top of the shoulder, along that upper track. Chin looks up towards the ceiling, still leaning the head to the side. And back to center. Changing arms, right arm crosses the back of the body. You can use your left hand to hold the wrist and pull the arm farther back behind the body. Sitting up nice and tall, we drop that left ear towards the left shoulder. And then chin up. And coming back to center. Let's cross the legs. Decompress a little bit out of that butterfly stretch. We bring our left arm up overhead, bend the elbow, placing the hand behind the back. Grabbing that left elbow with that right hand, and we try to draw the elbow up towards the ceiling to bring that stretch along the tricep, down the underarm, along the rib cage. And we switch. Right hand behind the back, trying to grab that elbow with the left hand to draw it across. And slow to unwind. Arms drop down by your side. We go chin to chest. And chin up, head drops back. And chin to chest, dropping the head and the neck down, trying not to fold at the mid-ribs, allowing the movement to stay in the neck. One more. Coming back to neutral, roll those shoulders back and down. Arms are going to come up overhead, fingers interlace. We stretch up and over to the right. Anchoring that left hip, we come back to center, stretch and lengthen up. Moving over into the left. One more side to side. Back to center. Arms rest by your side. Push those shoulders down. Stretch the spine long. Take a breath. And resting. All right, guys. Great work today. Awesome job.